Guys, it's Custa. So I am planning on doing a vlog type series with my YouTube channel where I'll be uploading videos of just sort of me talking, probably with gameplay in the background, and just sort of talking about anything that I think is interesting or that you guys be interested in talking about. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to sort of start this off with a sort of recap of my life in terms of how I managed to get to where I am now. Because it's kind of an interesting story, especially coming from Australia. So I thought some of you guys might like some insight. I know it's come out bits and pieces, but just like the little things I think are funny looking back. So that's what I'm going to be doing. We're going to be starting with that. I'm just going to get up to about the point where I joined Dallas for Overwatch League. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And I guess the place you got to start of it all was my Nintendo 64. That was old school. Um, we got it when I was about 5. We got Super Smash Bros. And me and my brothers played it constantly. Uh, my oldest brother was a Pikachu main. Nick, my middle brother Sean was a Samus main, and I was a Kirby main, and I still am in any Smash game ever. So that was essentially our life, just competing against each other on this Nintendo 64. I also had a Game Boy, played some Pokemon, all the classic things that kids did back then. So yeah, that's sort of like my first lick of gaming and sort of competition within that. As I got older, we got a PC, old, Microsoft 2000, no, like not even 2000, I don't think, just old school. I think the first game we ever I played like all those like online browser games when the internet was first coming out, but I think the first game that I actually played on the computer was like CS 1.5 or some like old school kind of gaming. Trying to remember if I played 1.0. I think it was just 1.5. That was before 1.6. I remember Dust 1. That's pretty much all I remember. Just Dust 1, sitting in that tunnel and camping that tunnel always. It was awful. I was awful. Um, it wasn't pretty. And then we also, I think, a couple years move on from there, and then Warcraft 3 custom games. So I used to play Warcraft 3 so much. I don't think I ever played like the single player or the actual way it's supposed to be played. I only played custom games, and there were so many good custom games in Warcraft 3. I still think it's like one of the best custom game modes that was ever made. We had, Footman Frenzy was my jam. I was the best ever at Footman Frenzy, according to me. I used to play with my brother and some of my friends. We used to go to there used to be a LAN cafe actually called Netland down at Marion Shopping Center, and we used to go there and play against other people in Footman Frenzy and play as like a 3-man group. And we had one brother who my middle brother Sean, he would tech up to the second level of like soldiers, and I would play heroes, and the other guy would sort of do a mix. We had the strats. We sucked every time someone good came across. Um, then we also had the times where I would play that game mode on my own against bots, so they don't even move. They just like spawn dudes, and then I would farm them. Like, show those bots who's boss, and then I would get the like Vladimir's cape or something, which was like 50,000 gold, some like unreasonable number, and then just one shot everything, and then just win the game. Except for when my computer crashed because there were too many minions. It was those were dark times, dark times. But I think the addiction of computer games really kicked in with World of Warcraft. Um, as with a lot of pro gamers, we've all played World of Warcraft in our past. I played it right towards the end of vanilla is when I just started playing as Burning Crusade was starting to come out. So I think I was leveling up my character as it got released. I was an absolute noob. I remember I wanted to play a Tauren, but I couldn't play a Tauren because I would finish the first quest and I didn't know where the next quest was. So I just thought I had to run to the next zone to get a quest. But I'm a level 1 running into the next like level 5 zone, just pressing my 1 button like, they're too strong! And it was unwinnable. So I just thought the Tauren race was broken and like the storyline was messed up and the developers are idiots. Other than the fact that the quest was just over there. So that's why I didn't play a Tauren. So I was like pretty bad. I think I'm like 12, 11 or 12 at this time. So I'm not very good. I ended up playing it for a while though, and I played it. I probably played for about a year, year and a half around this time. This is when I'm in around year 7, because I remember like it consumed my life, like because it's all I wanted to do was like play World of Warcraft, and because I'm a kid, and my mum obviously she's like, get off the computer, stop playing video games. So she put a curfew. I couldn't play on weeknights. Okay, so I was not allowed to play video games during the week, and only on the weekend I could play. And even then, I was still sort of limited. So what that does for someone who's like a 12-year-old who's addicted, they just think about every time they get to play that game. So I was always thinking about all these little things. I ended up having a gnome mage called Lavi who just chopped everyone down with my instant presence of mind pyroblast that used to destroy everybody. Um, that was sort of like what I did for that period of time, and I think that was the real change in like me focusing on playing video games, and it was sort of something that I did. Before then, like I was kind of like really out there. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid. I was pretty popular as a kid. But year 7, because where I was in primary school, I was year 6, but then we go from primary school to high school in year 7. So I was moving from a new school, and I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft. So I had a lot of friends in the new school, but like World of Warcraft was still like something that I did and I was always focused on. So I think that's sort of when my like I guess my life sort of shifted in terms of the direction that I would go, because otherwise I would probably been playing more sport. I probably wouldn't have done it, but World of Warcraft sort of pushed me in that angle. So I ended up playing PC as a for a long time. I ended up finishing Karazhan on my gnome maid with a guild, Alliance of Archangels. I'm not sure if any of you ever watched this, but I was Lavi. I was that annoying 12-year-old kid that was always complaining about everything. I remember crying because they made fun of me because I was a gnome character in the game. Just stupid shit, right? So I apologize for everything that you guys had to deal with. But I love that. That's still some of my favorite moments of World of Warcraft, because it was just so pure, and I just loved every single moment because I was so newbie at it. There was so much I had to do. It was the first like open world game that I ever really played, so I just loved it. But with that said, I remember getting it was either the end of year 8 or the end of year 7, one of them. But I remember going out for a day with the family for some reason. Got forced to go out, and I remember all I wanted to do was go home and play World of Warcraft. I got to the end of the day, and I was going home, and I was like, all I want to do is play World of Warcraft. This game is like controlling me. I should stop playing, which is a really good realization for someone who is 12 or 13. But I remember having that realization, and I just stopped playing. I remember canceling my subscription and just never playing the game for at least a few years. And I just like made this huge shift of like, I'm not going to play World of Warcraft anymore because it took control of my life. So, which was great. I ended up moving on from there to consoles, and I ended up playing Halo 3. Me and my friends, we played so many hours of Halo 3. I remember my brother, the first time I come home from school one day, and he's hooked up the Xbox 360 to the with an Ethernet cord. So we have the internet now on the Xbox, and I'm like, why do we need the internet on the Xbox? I am just fine playing, Valhalla and just shooting across each other just with us three. And he's like, no, just play it. Oh my lord, I put so many games into Halo 3. Me and my friends, because you could just have a friend that would just be there, and then you could play 2-player online. Oh, that was so much of that time of just friends coming over and just like joining in, and we just played. Because you can have up to 4 people. So we got like 4 custers in a game. Well, I wasn't called Custa back then, and we just I think I played thousands of games in Halo 3. That was such an amazing game, and it was probably my first ever like online competitive game in a way that like ever brought me into it. And the first lick of esports actually was during this moment. I had a kid that I played basketball with actually called Ryan, and he played Halo 3, and I remember being like, I'm really good, and he's like, yeah, I'm really good. I actually went to Melbourne to compete. And he goes, "Do you ever play the MLG mode?" And I'm like, "No, I just play online deathmatch." And he goes, "Well, I'll play you on MLG mode and we'll see how we go." So MLG mode was like this, like battle rifles and snipers only. And I was like, well, this is stupid. How am I gonna SMG rush people down? How am I gonna get the sword and kill everyone? And I got destroyed, 25-1, I think it was. Wasn't even close. He's just destroying me. That was my first ever like, whoa, this guy's really good at this game and he competes at a top level. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was a really cool thing that he did. But yeah, so that was my thing. And then I played Call of Duty 4, like during this time, like of Halo 3 and that kind of stuff. I think after or maybe during Call of Duty 4 came out, I played a lot with my friends. Then we had Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2. So I'm essentially just playing consoles during this time. And I'm loving life right now. This is because that's a much more healthy childhood, right? Of like, I'm playing with all my friends. All my friends were playing it. You get to interact. I go to their place. We stay over. We play the games. Casual, classic, young high school stuff. That's when a bit around there. I think around year 9 or something like that. I started playing Dota. One of my brother's friends introduced us to Dota because Dota's that one game that when I was playing Warcraft 3 custom games, like, there's so many Dota games, and I'm just like, maybe I'll play a game of Dota. Let's see what it's about. I get in there, and I choose a hero. I'm so confused. I just choose one guy. This guy has cool abilities. I think I end up choosing Blade Master Yanero because I know him from Full Man Frenzy. I'm like, this is easy. I just spin to win. I can run around invisible. No problem. And what happened? Wait, was he even in the game? I don't know. I remember picking someone like Blade Master, and I spend the first 5 minutes of the game looking at the recipes, and I end up buying this sweet recipe that only cost me 400 gold. But I didn't know that I only got the recipe, so it didn't give me anything that I needed. And then my teammates say, this person's a feeder, and everyone leaves the game. And that was my first experience of Dota, so I obviously never played it again. Saying that the game was stupid and not me. But a couple of years later, after that, like Warcraft 3, where I was playing those things, one of my brother's friends said, no, I'll teach you guys how to play. So we started playing games, and we fed, obviously, for a while, but we eventually got good at it, and we learned how to play. And I played Dota a lot with those guys. I used to love, joining games and playing with those guys. And that was a really fun time. Except, Warcraft 3, like, if someone disconnected, it was awful. The games were more than 50% of the games were just garbage. But when you got a good game, it was a good time. So we played that with my brother's friends for a while. We played a bunch of CS 1.6 around this time as well. I think maybe Counter-Strike Source is out at this point as well. So we're starting to play that. And then TF2 came out. And I put so many hours into TF2, like just as a casual person. Those were the best times. When the game just came out, they didn't have hats, they didn't have items, they didn't have any of that stuff. I played TF2. And I just spent so many hours on Gold Rush, on Dust Bowl, on all those, Hydro, just all those crazy maps, just playing whatever I wanted, running around. And I played TF2 for a solid, like, couple of years just casually, I think. Maybe like a year and a bit casually. And I remember ended up grouping up with these guys. They had a clan called Cake in TF2. And I thought that was awesome. So I was like, Cake, I like that clan. Can I be in your clan? I ended up joining their clan, and it was just a pub stomping clan. There weren't that many of them. It was just a few of us that used to group up together and play. But they ended up getting into the Australian. They ended up making a team and joining the Australian thing. I really wanted to be on the team. I'm like, hey guys, can I be on the team? I'm like a really good scout. I love playing scout. I'll carry. And they're like, we're going for Div 3. And unfortunately, we don't think you're good enough for Div 3. And they're like, why don't you join a different team and get really good? And then and prove this so you can play on our Div 3 team. And I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. I just want to play on your team. Let me play. And they're stringing me along, and they don't want to be mean to me. And they're just like, yeah, sure, man, we'll play with you. And then they just never did, which was bad. But I all of a sudden I was like, oh, there's this, competitive mode, 6v6. That's like all the good players go and play in, and they play these like matches. And I remember starting at Div 5. I was playing the pugs that someone would make through a group, and you join, and it's the first like 12 people to join before they change the password, and then you get picked. And I got fat kidded most of the time, until I got better. And this was like the first competitive game where I've ever looked at it and be like, I want to be better at this game. How do I get better? And I used to watch those pugs. I used to play as much as I could. Um, so I started as a scout player, so I used to like watch all these guys, and then I started watching like the official matches that happened. Um, and yeah, it was it was Oz Fortress. For anyone that doesn't know what that was, Australian TF2. It was like the first time I ever wanted to get better at something. And I remember starting on some, all these garbage teams like Grip and all these weird things. I started at Div 5 playing Scout, and I got to about Div 3 playing Scout. And I loved it. I was still getting better, but I was like hard stuck because my aim wasn't that good back then, and I just wasn't that good. And I remember being like, man, like I kind of want to play at a higher level, and I think I'm smart enough and I know how to play the game because at this point I put 1,000 hours into like this competitive mode, and I've been playing for a while. So I said I'm gonna go medic. Actually, funnily enough, because I used to watch a lot of the North American TF2, I used to love watching Pure on Twitch. Who actually plays for? I actually don't know who Pure plays for right now, but he now plays Overwatch. And he was on Splice way back in the day, and I remember meeting him, being like, "Hey man, when I was playing in TF2, I used to love watching you play medic, and you're the reason I ended up switching to medic." And that was like the first time I ever played like support as like a role. So I made this switch to medic, and I was on this Div 3 team. We ended up doing really well, getting into Div 2. We then I think we won Div. No, this is a funny story actually. So we do well in Div 3. I'm on this team, and I switched to medic, and we ended up getting to Div 2. We're playing Div 2, and I think we're the best team in Div 2 by a good margin. But there's this other team. But what they had is they we were gonna beat them, but one of their players called Anthony Bruh. He was a pretty average roaming soldier, but he was best friends with Termo, who, if anyone knows the Australian TF2 scene or actually knows even Overwatch, Termo plays Overwatch now. Termo was one of the best players to play TF2 in Australia. So what they did is Termo played under Anthony Bruh's account, and we could tell because Anthony Bruh played out of his fucking mind. This is in the grand finals, out of his mind, but we ended up going back and watching the videos, and Tomo does a very specific thing when he jumps and lands. He does like a wiggle with his mouse, and he did that. But Anthony Bruh plays with like a million cents, so it looked nothing like how he usually plays. We ended up reporting it, and they were like, "Yeah, we know this happened, but we can't. It's too hard to like actually do punishment." So we lost Div 2, but I think they default lost the win, or I don't know. Something happened, but that was just sort of a funny time of the first time I ever got screwed out of a competition. But, we still should have won. I'm still getting to the competition. We ended up going on to the Premier Division, and we ended up coming third, I think, in one of the seasons. And we were loving it, but me as a player and us as a team were so far below the top 2 teams or 3 teams because these guys have been playing forever. Some of these guys are still playing, and they're just like amazing at the game. This is like team immunity. Like you think of like Yuki, Sheep. Even like Bulk, Aporia, like all those guys, they were just like really fucking good. And they were just way better than we were. And at that point, I sort of like realized that I'd sort of hit my cap unless I wanted to keep playing for a very long time. And I remember coming to the conclusion like, I don't really want to do this, and just stopping. I still played it casually here and there, but I ended up just like stop trying to improve and stop trying to get better. And this is around, I want to say this is after year 12. So I was playing all through like towards the end of year 10, year 11, and year 12. I think this is around the time that I was playing TF2. So that sort of like comes to the end of like what I played as a video games growing up. I used to love it. It was my favorite thing. It was sort of the thing that I did as a kid. I didn't really advertise it. It wasn't part of my personality, but it was something that I did and I loved doing. I was also playing sport, but it's this thing that I was always passionate about. And I remember actually, towards when I'm turning 18, towards the very end of year 12, StarCraft 2 came out that year, I think. And I loved StarCraft 2, mainly because I loved watching it. I thought, watching on the GOM TV launcher, watching GSL, watching these amazing Korean players, watching these foreigners like, Hark, Idra, Idra? Why am I thinking Eska? Yeah, Idra, all these like Westerners, that just like went over to Korea and competed in Korea, and I loved watching it every time. That was my first like actual esports, because that's like where esports was like actually becoming a thing, that being televised in the thing. They're huge, these guys are famous, they train everything, they travel, and that was like wow. And I remember being 18 and at a get together with my friend, with my brother's friends actually, who are all old. They're probably like 21, 22 when I'm 18, and he said, one of his friends said to me, if you could do anything that you wanted to do right now, what would it be? And I said, I would love to be an esports player. I think that looks amazing. I think that is like the coolest job in the world. They get to compete, they get to travel, and they get to play video games. So, at that time, it was just a pipe dream and something that I didn't really think too much about. So, like, that's sort of where my mentality is at. I would love to do it, but I'm a rational, 17, 18-year-old who just finished high school. I ended up doing pretty well. I got like a 95 plus on my ATAR. I can't even remember. No, 94 plus getting on my ATAR, which is like your like level, and it caps out 100. So I ended up going to university. So this is where like I start going into moving away from video games and more just like living a real life. So during this time, I'm 18, 19, 20. I'm going out a lot more. I'm, hanging out with friends, and I'm doing university. So I ended up doing civil and structural engineering degree with a double degree in finance, which is a 5-year degree. And I ended up doing the exact same degree as my best friend from high school, which is great because, I just did everything with him. Unfortunately, I wanted to take a gap year after year 12. I wanted to work, I wanted to do a little bit of travel, and I wanted to like keep playing games in a way. But he didn't want to take a gap year. He just wanted to just go with it. So I was like, oh man, if I take a gap year, then I'm going to be a year behind him in all his classes. It's just not going to be the same. It'd be easier if I just went now. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up going to university straight off the bat. And the first 2 years were pretty uneventful. Just doing uni, going to classes. I didn't really like explore that much of like the university lifestyle and culture and all that kind of stuff. I just sort of went with Andy. We did our classes when we actually managed to go to classes, and then we left. And that's sort of what we did. I had okay grades. I would say like between a distinction and a credit, which is like a 70, 75. So it's okay, but not great. And I'm just sort of getting by. And I remember at the end of those 2 years, I'm like, no, that's enough studying for me. I've been doing it. I really want to take a gap year now. So on my third year of uni, I ended up taking a gap year where I just don't go to uni. And I was like, I'm gonna work almost full time. I'm gonna focus on just like traveling and just doing my own thing and just like not having to study and like do all that. So that's what I did. At this point, ever since I was 18, I actually had a job as a bartender at like one of the local pubs. So I look after as a group. It's not that big of a place, so I look after like the restaurant, the bar, and we also have poke rooms in bars, in pubs in Australia. So I sort of did a bit of all that, and I've been doing that since I was 18. At this point, I'm 20 or 21. So like I'm just sort of getting it all together. So I'm like, I'm gonna work full time at the bar, and make a lot of money, because you actually make pretty good money doing that. And I just wanted to save up a bunch of money and go traveling. So that's what I ended up doing. I played more games. Was just sort of living the casual life of like full time work, but not really doing much outside of that. And I ended up saving a bunch of money. Didn't end up going traveling. I wanted to, but I didn't have anyone to go with, and I didn't really want to travel alone. Um, I think at this point it's important to talk about Crackland. So Crackland was it's kind of like a community that sponsored our TF2 team when I was in like Div 2, way back when I was in like year 11, year 12. So we ended up joining their community in a way. and like being a part of Crackland. And I ended up like meeting a lot of those guys. I hung around. They played these other games. Like they ended up playing like Battlefield as like squads, and you used to squad up and play them. And I loved it. You know, it was a great way to like play games with other people and have more fun doing it. So even after I stopped playing TF2, I was still a part of that community in a way where I was playing these different games with these guys. So I was doing a lot of that when I was in my off season. So they're a North American region. So I was playing their nights where they're playing is like my afternoon, which is perfect for me because I wasn't doing anything better with my life. I used to work mostly nights. So I played a lot with those guys, even on high ping, and I loved it. And I was gonna go to Toronto for the gathering, but I didn't end up doing it. So what then happened is kind of interesting. So I ended up going back to university after the gap year and being like, great, okay, let's get back to it. Let's focus on, I've had my year off. I've done what I wanted to do. Yeah, let's focus on university. And as you can expect, it just didn't go. Um, I was I just couldn't get back into it. I was struggling. I was struggling to focus on what I were, and I'm like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. But that's a really hard thing to come to terms with. During this time as well, I was actually going up. I was going through a pretty bad breakup with a girl that I was sort of seeing in Adelaide. And once we officially broke up, and that was about halfway through this third year that I was doing at university, I was like, okay, I have a bunch of money saved up during my mid-year break for university. I'm gonna travel. And what was happening is this Crack Clan group, they were having a thing that they call a gathering, which is they people from all over the country and like some people even from across the world go and we do something. So we ended up that year was in Toronto. So I ended up traveling to Toronto, being like, all right, I'm just gonna go to this gathering. I have the money for it. It'll be experience. I'll do it. I ended up traveling to Toronto on my own, and meeting up with all these random people that I've been playing video games with for the last couple of years. And a main one of them is GC, and some of you guys might know him from my channel. He was a really good friend. He's a few years older than me, but we just always clicked. We were the two, in my opinion, the two best players that played within that group, and we always used to just carry, and we always used to have fun playing together. So I mainly wanted to see him and catch up with him. Um, so that was a really good experience. We ended up catching up as a group. We spent a couple of days in Toronto, like explaining that, exploring that, and then we went up to Algonquin Park, which is it's kind of like a national park, and we ended up going like kayaking and then camping in the woods. It's just honestly an amazing trip. And I come back to Australia after that trip. I meet all these amazing people in Toronto, and I come back and I'm sitting and I'm trying to catch up because I didn't do any homework over the mid semester break. So I'm trying to catch up right now with everything that I've fallen behind on. And I was so far behind. I was seriously struggling. And then there was this one test that we had to do. So I sit down in this test. It's I think it's a structural mathematics test or something like that. And I'm sitting there and I just go, what is this test? I remember struggling when I was like preparing for it. I was like, these are hard questions. This is going to be rough. But there were 5 questions and I could answer half of a question out of the whole 5 pages. And I remember being halfway into that test being like, I don't even know where to go. I don't even know where to start. Like these questions aren't like the things I've researched before. And so the first half, I'm just sitting there, like, I'm fucked. This is I'm gonna fail out of this test. It's gonna be so bad. So I go, okay, well, why don't I just stop doing uni? I don't want to do it anymore. At this point now, I'm like, my grades are starting to seriously hinder, and it's starting to show. I just don't want to do it anymore. So I spend the second half of that test not even writing anything on my thing, and I can see the teacher walking past, and I'm just like twiddling my thumbs, just like thinking about what I'm gonna do. It's like, well, I guess I can move overseas. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And I'm just sort of thinking to myself about what's going on. So at this point, I've made up my mind. Funny note about that test. 60% of the class ended up failing that test, and they had to redo the test. So the test was way too hard as it was. I didn't know that at the time. Fuck it, I'm dropping out anyway. So I'm at this point where I'm like, all right, what do I do? So when I was in Toronto, um, I actually met this really cool guy called Beaky, as some of you would know. Not actually that cool, a bit of a loser, but he was GC's brother, and he was just starting to move. So he lived in Toronto his whole life, but he was moving to Vancouver for a job. So he was going alone, and he was like, "Yeah, sweet," and we ended up hitting it off, getting along really well. And so when I came back to Australia, actually, we played a lot of Rocket League together. And we just played a lot of kept playing a lot of games together from overseas, and enjoying talking to each other. So when I dropped out, I was like, well, I guess I could go to Vancouver and travel, and just like travel abroad and just do something different with my life. Because if I stay in Adelaide, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. You need to sort of get yourself out of the comfort zone to do something different. So I made this decision. I was like, oh yeah, I'll go to Vancouver. And around this time is when the Overwatch closed beta is getting like announced, and all these videos are starting to come out. And I remember when I'm making this decision to go, I was like, if I was ever at a point in my life where I could go for something to become a professional, this would be it. In esports, this is my shot. It's a new game. I have a lot of the skills from playing Team Fortress 2 because the game translated a lot from what I was seeing. Everyone's starting from scratch. And I said, well, I'm never going to be able to accomplish what I want if I live in Australia. Being an Australian and trying to reach that level is, a needle in a haystack at that point. So I said, okay, well, if I really want to pursue it, going to Vancouver is a good choice as well. Get in North America, start practicing. So at this point, everything's sort of starting to come together. I'm making my plans of like what I want to do. So I end up leaving that test that I was in, and I go home. Unfortunately, my friend was there as well because I was driving him, and I ended up like having the talk with my parents, be like, "I'm gonna drop out. I don't want to do university anymore. I don't think it's gonna get me where I want to go. I would prefer to just chill and do what I want to do and attempt this, and then if I ever have to come back, I'll come back." Um, my parents very hesitant at first. My mum was always like, just finish your degree. Just once you do that, you can go away, and then you can always come back, and it's there. And I was like, no, I'm not going to waste another 2.5 years of my life doing something that I don't want to do. This is the best time to do what I want to do. And if I don't take this shot, I don't think there'll ever be one. And I was like, if let's say I fail what I want to accomplish in a year, I can come back. I can probably pick up my course again, and all this kind of things. My parents were very hesitant. Fortunately, I have an amazing brother, who my oldest brother, who I always play video games with. I played with him through everything. He introduced me to pretty much every game I've ever played. He was always better than me. He was the person I was always trying to be better than. He did a really amazing job of helping me convince my mum that this was the right thing to do. And I remember mum telling me that like one of the things that really changed her mind about everything that I was doing was my brother went up to her and he said, "You shouldn't be scared of what Scott's doing. I believe he can do this. Like he has the skills to do this. So just you should let him do it." And to this day, that's still like one of the most important things. Having that support of my family to go for this and accomplish this was something that you can't put enough weight on, because knowing that I always have something to fall back to. Let's say I crashed and burned in North America, I could have easily come back and my family would have taken me in, and they would have helped me sort out my life. So sort of having that safety net really helps when you're going for something like this. And I can't put into words like how much I appreciate what my family has done to get me to where I am now. So it's at this point I've like made up my mind. I'm going overseas and I'm going to try and become a professional Overwatch player. And I don't actually tell many people when I'm starting. When I tell people I'm leaving, I just tell them I'm going to go traveling and work in North America, in Canada, and just work in the snowfields or try and do this thing. Because the biggest thing about this goal is it was for me, right? It was something that's really hard to explain to other people, and as soon as you start explaining it to other people, these expectations start riding on what you're trying to tell them that you're going to do. If I start telling people who know nothing about video games that I'm going to try and go and accomplish this almost impossible feat, people just aren't going to take it seriously, and also going to try and talk me out of it. So I didn't tell that many people, mainly only my family and my closest friends, that this is what I was actually going to do. Um, yeah, I remember my brother, my middle brother, my other brother being in the car. He was driving me home. I'd been out drinking, and he was driving me home. And he said, "You know, how do you? What happens if you fail? Like, how do you know you're gonna do it?" And I said, I knew right there. I just said, I know I can do this. I know I have the ability. I know I have the drive to do this. And that's still like an important moment, I think, for me, is having that realization and that recognition that I know I can do this. All I have to do is try it and put everything I can into it. So like this whole lead up is like a lot of me just sort of confirming what I already know and what I want to do. And that's what made the transition like almost seamless. So this is when I move in with Beaky in Vancouver. This is towards at the very start of 2000 and what year is it now? 16. Towards the very start of 2016, early January 2016, I moved to Vancouver. And this sort of starts my whole move into Overwatch of like, this is what I'm doing with my life and this is what I'm going to try and accomplish. So I moved to Vancouver um, and moved to Scarborough, for anyone knows that, in Vancouver, outside Vancouver. It's like 30-minute SkyTrain away from the city. Uh, with my friend Beaky, as many of you would know, and we're in a one-bedroom place. He's in the bedroom. I'm in the living room. I have a mattress on the floor. I have a desk with my PC, which I brought a bunch of my stuff and built a new PC in the thing, and that's all we had. We had a kitchen and a bathroom, and we had a Nintendo 64, and that pretty much consisted of my life for a good 6 months. So at this point, at the start of January 2016, the game is still in closed beta. I actually, fortunately enough, got an invite in closed beta around November of 2015. So I'd been playing the game for a month or two, just sort of like messing around. Everyone was still noobs, and just there was no ranked mode. It was just quick play. Everyone's playing quick play, and I started messing around in it. And I remember I'm playing in North America now, and I'm playing on US West servers. And I'm just trying to find a team. These competes. There's these small tournaments that are just starting to happen. So I want to find a team so I can compete in those, because anyone's able to enter at this point. If you have a team, you can enter. There's only 16 teams, if that, competing each week, and they're on like these are beat invitationals, like the very first ones. Actually, were they called beat back then? No, they were the Gosu Gamers Invitational. Gosu Gamers each week. And this is back when I joined a team called Code 7. This was a team that had Nicholas and Talk TGO. These are like old school names. There's a lot of controversy around those two for reasons that I'll go into later. But I ended up meeting Nicholas TGO in a public game. And we were we had a good time. So he added me as a friend. And he said, "Hey man, I'm putting together a team, and we want to be serious. Like, we're trying to go pro. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's do it, man!" Like this is exactly what I'm after. So we ended up putting together a team. Let me see if I can remember all the names. So we have Nicholas TGO and Talk TGO as a DPS. We have Shake as my other support. Shake is now a coach for Boston Uprising. Then we have who else do we have? We have Joe Meister, who went by Trudel back then. So we have Joe Meister, who was our flex tank, and then we had, God, I'm gonna forget his name. Damn, some guy's main tank that was with us for a while. So we had this team, and we ended up doing pretty good. This was during a very cancerous meta of double Tracer, Symmetra, Lucio, double Zen. This is back when Symmetra used to give 50 shields to everyone in the team. And Lucio had ridiculously wide auras, and Zen Orbs would never disappear. So you used to put Zen Orbs on the Tracers, and they would never disappear. So you'd have a Symmetra who would give 50 health to the Tracer. Then you'd have a Zen who orbs one of the Tracers. So they have 200 health and a permanent orb, healing orb. And then you have two Lucios who are protecting the Symmetra, and then you have a Lucio who's protecting the Symmetra and the two Zens. So it's essentially two Tracers raid bossing against the other four defensive, and that's what and that's what everyone did. So that was that. We rose to fame in that meta because Nicholas and Talk were both great Tracers back then, and we had me and Shake who were both really good Zen players at the time. So we ended up having a lot of success. we still weren't as good as C9. Those guys were incredible. You go back and look at that C9. This C9 is with Reva, Debet, Kai, Grego, Adam. I'm missing one of them. I don't remember who the last one is. Sorry, off my head, I can't even remember. So yeah, this is like during the era. Envious actually is another team that's contending for the North American spot, and that team had Coolmat69, Stoop, who's now a coach for our team, Raz, and all these different people. So this is like a completely different time. So I end up playing with that team for the first like couple of months. For Gosu Gamers, I ended up getting my name out there as a North American player. Plays my role. I'm known by all the guys, and I know all the guys I've competed against these guys. I ended up leaving Code 7 due to disagreements with Nick and Talk TGO. There was a lot of controversy around those two because Nicholas and Talk TGO had a previous ban in CSGO, ECA ban, and a lot of people knew about it, and a lot of people thought that they might be hacking an Overwatch or the legitimacy of the ban, and then also that ban created a lot of problems for getting sponsorships from teams. So we were just like, I was like, there's too many complications around this, so I ended up leaving that team. I ended up getting replaced by Harblu, interesting enough. So I leave Code 7. That team goes on to become Gale Force Esports and TSM for a week. But so I have about a week off where I'm looking for a new team. And this is when Envious were the hard-hitting best team in North America before this is when Envious were a North American team and they had Tailspin, Coolmat, Stoop, Minstrel. So these guys, and that team was starting to fall apart. Their main support, the support player Raz didn't want to play anymore. So I was like, my time to shine. And I ended up getting a message. Like I messaged everyone trying to join a team. Buds was trying to put together a team. Stoop's trying to put together a team with Coolmat and stuff. Stoop sends me a message. Never talked to the guy. Absolutely no. He goes, listen up, idiot. You're going to join our team and you're not going to join their team, okay? Just sign with us and we'll win. And I was like, this is Stoop, the main tank that had been crushing everyone. I'm like, sure, whatever you say, man. I'll join you guys. So I ended up joining that team with Coolmat, Stoop, Buds, Minstrel, and ID. ID is an old school Quake player. I don't know what he's doing these days. Actually, I saw him at the World Cup. He was the manager for the US World Cup team. So I'm on that team, and we're called Nubris. We don't have the Envy sponsorship at right anymore. That Envy sponsorship ended up going over to Europe, where it was the classic Envious Taimu, Internet Hulk, Chipsajin, Coco. That's where Envious went. But I partied up with all the new with all the players that were old Envious and making a new team. So we called ourselves Nubris. We were only Nubris for about 2 weeks, I think. We played 2 Ghost Gamers, ended up having a lot of success. I think we came second in, I don't know. We ended up doing pretty well on Nubris. And this is right around where Overwatch is releasing. Okay, so the game is just about to come out. Open beta's ended, closed beta's ending, and we have like a 2-week period where the game's just like not available to play. So we're chilling out, and at this point, we get approached by IDDQD. Well, actually not me. Coolmat and Stoop get approached by IDDQD, and IDDQD's like, I have Fnatic who wants to sponsor me and whatever team I can put together. I have Bonathil, who's a support player. Coolmat and Stoop, do you want to come? They're like, yeah, let's bring Custa with us. So we're sort of like fracturing our team. That's sort of what happened back in the day when there were like no contracts and stuff. People just left and joined teams at willy-nilly whenever they saw a good opportunity. So Coolmat and Stoop were like, bring Custa. Alright, so I came over with them. So we got IDDQD, Vonathil, and Zoms. They also brought in Zoms, who's a name that a bunch of you might be familiar with. And then we have me, Coolmat, and Stoop. And we make the original Fnatic. Zoms actually gets cut pretty fast from the team. Like in the first week, we were playing and we like Buds because we've been playing with Buds. We like Buds more. We think Buds is a better player and he'd be a better fit for the team. So before we sign the official contracts, we should pick up Buds. They're like, okay, let's do it. So we pick up Buds, and that is what becomes the core of Fnatic for the next 6 months. This is around this time is when we first start traveling on land. So the game is released now, and we have lands. We're getting paid by Fnatic. Everything's golden. You know, my professional career is on the rise. This is like my first time ever playing actually at the tier 1 scene. So we go. Our first one is at Gamescom, which is in Germany. We end up coming third/fourth, which was a pretty good result for us because that's back when Rogue and Envious were fighting it out for the number 1 spot, and we actually lost to. Actually, no, we beat Reunited twice, I think, and then we ended up losing to Envious on the stage, I believe. So, we did all right. We had a good run. And then we had E-League, where we also came third/fourth. That was an interesting tournament. That was actually still the best run tournament I've ever seen, like of a traveling tournament. They only have one Overwatch E-League, and it was amazing. They did a North American side, and then they did a European side. So we played all the North American sides. We played, and Envious was in our group. In that group, so there were 8 North American teams. We ended up coming second. We lost to Envious in the grand finals for the North American region. We lost 3-1, but the Envious was like really good back then. This is back when Envious was becoming the powerhouse that they were. This is when Tailspin was on Envious with Internet Hulk, Chips, Coco. That's when they were like at their strongest, in my opinion. As a team, they did really well against us, but I think they went on to lose. Did they win or lose to the European? I think they won. I cannot remember. Oh no, they lost to Misfits. So Misfits came from the European side, and then I think Misfits beat them. Oh, I can't actually. That's interesting. I wonder if I could actually look that up later and confirm that. But yeah, so we ended up losing, so we came third/fourth at E-League as well. All right, then we go on to DreamHack Winter, which is in. And E-League was in Atlanta. And then we go to DreamHack Winter, which was in Jönköping. I'm butchering the name, in Sweden. So we went there, and we actually came second. So Envious and Rogue didn't appear at this tournament, and they were the 2 best teams at that time. Neither of them appeared because they both went to Apex. So this was the first tournament where we were like, yo, it's our time to win. We got this. And we ended up, this is back when NIP was running Quad Tank, and they were supposedly unbeatable as Quad Tank. They were a European team. We'd never really played against them. But they were like, people were saying they run Quad Tank, and they're incredible. And we actually beat them in the semifinals. And that's still to this day one of my favorite wins of all time. I remember we were full holding them on Volskaya, and I remember they're walking in, and we instantly kill someone. And I remember my hands just instantly like feeling like going numb and like shaking because I realized we had just won the game. Because like I had a Transcendence, we just rushed them, I Transcendence, and we just killed them all, and we won the game. And we won that match against a team that was like supposedly going to sweep this tournament. So we beat them, and that was like still one of my favorite wins. And then we played against Misfits, and we lost. They played a lot of Tracer, which no one really did. Soon played Tracer like everywhere before anyone else played Tracer everywhere, and destroyed us playing Tracer. So that was like a completely that was our first second place finish though. So we were doing pretty well. This is with the roster, the original Fnatic roster. At this point though is where IDDQD isn't on the team anymore. That's all, as far as I'm going to go with that. Isn't on the team anymore. So we ended up replacing him with Hafakul before we go to Korea. So we ended up, after a couple of our successes, we go to Korea. We get invited to Apex Season 2. Envious has just won Season 1. They invite four Western teams this time to Apex Season 2. It was us, Envious, Rogue. Actually, I think they were called Misfits at the time. And C9, Cloud9. And that's where the original C9 like terminology came from. Because in an official match, Cloud9, they got off the cart at 2 like crucial moments in one match and like lost them the thing, and that's why it's called a C9 to these days from Apex Season 2. So we went to Korea with that team, that original 6-man roster, and plus Hafakul, and we got destroyed. Korea is just a step above. We were losing to like tier 2 Korean teams. We were really struggling, and that really put a drain on our team. Like living overseas and not having success in scrims is like really hard to deal with. We really struggled to sort of pull back from that and just like focus up. We ended up, it's actually funny, we ended up having Runaway and Concrete Panthera in our group. So we lost to Kongdu Panthera in our first match. They were just way too good, and then Runaway was on the up when we were playing them, and they played really well. They ended up, I don't know where they finished, but they finished really high in the end. So we had two like juggernaut teams in our group, but we like didn't play well against them at all. And then we beat Flashlucks 3-1, which was like one of the weaker teams. So we went 2-1 in the groups, but that's our Korea trip over. We had an amazing time. I loved Korea. It was such a unique experience, but we lived in hotels for like 2 months. I got to experience the culture, but it was so much of a drain on me. I think I learned a lot, but yeah, it was a lot. And once we came back from that, Fnatic, so we after Korea, we were supposedly to get a team house in Los Angeles. So I moved back to Los Angeles instead of going back to because I actually threw in my apartment in Vancouver before I left for Korea because I'm like I'm not paying 2 months rent. Oh, they said we'll get a team house after Korea, so I ended up going back to LA and living in like the owner's friend's house. Well, he has a spot in his room because he doesn't live there in LA, but he has a room in LA. So I ended up staying there, and they were gonna put the team house in like the garage, and that's where we would practice, and then the players would live somewhere else, and that was their like Fnatic's like dream. But around now is where the league is starting to be announced, and everyone's trying to like scramble. Like the organization Fnatic's trying to get a spot in the league. They're like scrambling for all that. Us as a team, we just came back from Korea. Vonafil and Hafakul ended up leaving the team. A bunch of reasons. So they're not on the team anymore. So we're trying to put together a roster, Fnatic, that will do well. We ended up picking Realzy X, who's a UK player, Lucio player, and Tailspin. Actually, we brought Tailspin back and joined Fnatic. But with that roster, we just never put it together. It just never really came together for us. We were struggling in scrims. We're trying to find the problems. This is where Stoops having to play Winston, but he didn't really want to play the game anymore, so we ended up moving Stoop to coach. But then we couldn't find a main tank that we liked. So we have all these replacements and people coming in and out and that kind of stuff. And at some point, I think it was Tailspin who was like, "Yeah, I'm just not gonna do this. Like, it's just too hard." And we were like, "Yeah, it's when you're working so hard to get something to work and it just won't work. At some point, you just have to throw in the towel. Like at some point, you have to be like, "All right, it's just not right." All of a sudden, we're not clicking anymore. We're having problems with the new additions. We can't really find anyone that complements the team. Everything's just sort of falling apart, and we're like, "All right, we'll go our separate ways." And everyone, good luck to everyone, and see how that goes. So that was the end of Fnatic Overwatch, which was looking back was some of my favorite times in Overwatch. We traveled to so many different places. We had a lot of amazing lands. Man, there was just a lot of good times. In in that team, we went to UK we went to London a couple of times. We went to Germany. We went to Sweden. We went to Korea. We traveled over the US for events. We had MLG Vegas. Actually, I forgot about MLG Vegas, where we came third or fourth and lost the phase. Man, there was just a lot of tournaments, and traveling with those guys back then was an amazing time. So I really do miss those guys, and I miss that team. But sort of at that point, it had played its course, and you sort of got to accept that. So now we sort of go into this period where I don't have a team. So I'm in LA in a team house for a team that I don't play anymore. So I need to leave. So I end up getting in contact with Beaky and GC, and they live in Toronto. And I was saying like, can I come live with either of you guys? And they said you can come crash at our parents' house. Which I am still eternally grateful to that whole family because of how much they have given me and how much they have supported me to get me to where I am now. I ended up moving into their parents' house temporarily, and I'm not a quiet person when I play the game as well. So they had to put up with me. I was there for probably a few months at their parents' place, just like trying to find solutions. Because at this point, I'm not making any money anymore, so I'm trying to like live kind of frugally. And so I'm kind of struggling. At this point, I don't have a team, so I'm streaming as much as I can to sort of make ends meet. I this is around this time as well. I joined Arc 6, and I think Arc 6 is actually a really interesting storyline because I think without Arc 6, I probably don't end up where I am now because I was after Fnatic and we went to Korea. I hadn't played really in any tournaments, and I didn't really have any teams. Contender Season 0 was going on, and I didn't have a team. There was no spots for me in any of the teams. They already had players. Um, so when Arc 6 asked me to play, and we played in that one beat invitational, and we ended up. I only played on that team for a week, and we played beat invitational. We lost to Immortals in the lower bracket finals and came third. No, we lost to Rogue in the lower bracket finals. And we lost 3-2 in a match that we should have won. Like we made a bunch of mistakes on the third map, like Lijiang, which we should have won, and we would have won the series, like 3-0. But instead we threw. But regardless of the result, I played pretty well in that whole tournament, and it sort of kept me relevant. And without that tournament, I don't think I stay relevant, and I think it's really hard to justify to these teams that I should still be playing. So I am grateful to that team, to Arc 6. You know, I love all those guys. I wish I could have played with those guys for longer. After that beat invitational, I remember I was still practicing with Arc 6. And as a team, we were trying to, like, there's no more tournaments anymore. Blizzard put a hold on all tournaments from, like, July, August. They put a hold. They weren't allowing teams to play tournaments anymore. No one was allowed to play in a competitive, so teams weren't scrimming. You know, like, what are you scrimming for if you can't do? Like, stay fresh? It's, like, hard to justify. When teams are, like, also disbanding because they're all signing for these Overwatch League teams or trying to find these Overwatch League teams. So, as a team for Arc 6, we were trying to find an Overwatch League team that would pick up us up as a roster, as a 6-man roster, which, you know, you look back at now, we had a good roster. We had myself, Dante, XQC, Space, Ginger Pop, and Pizza. Ginger Pop and Pizza both left the scene after they didn't get Overwatch League spots, but I think they would have done well. I think the roster probably wouldn't have done amazingly. Now we look at the caliber of Overwatch League, but that's a solid 6 players. You can build around that. And we could have had like a really good team. But unfortunately, we couldn't find a team that wanted to like sign us as a group. So we eventually, people ended up getting individual offers for their own team. This is around the time where Dante was like massively valuable. Because you know he was playing super well, and then you know XUC, myself and Space ended up finding teams on across the board. But so I was like, at this point, this is like dark times. I'm living in my friend's parents' house. I ended up having to leave and move in with. So you've met Beaky and you met GC. They're brothers. Their third brother owns a place in Toronto, and I ended up renting his basement out. So I ended up like actually near Toronto. So I ended up racing his basement out for almost dirt cheap because you know their family's incredible. So I'm living with these guys. I'm not really accomplishing much. I'm just streaming. I'm trying to find these teams. I'm trying to find where I like sit and find someone who wants to sign me. Fortunately enough, through my connections of just playing the game for the last year and a half, really helped out. This is when Kai is coach of Old Envious, who is getting picked up by Dallas Fuel, and everyone's like knows that because everyone knew that they were going to get an Overwatch League spot. So we got Dallas Fuel, and so I ended up messaging Kai being like, "Hey man, I know you guys have a pretty set roster, but you're probably going to want bench players. Would you be interested in me coming in?" And he's like, "Yeah, we actually could be interested in you. Like, do you play Lucio?" And I said, "No, but I can learn." And up getting an account to like 45, 50 as Lucio only about a year ago. That's when I first learned Lucio, and I did trials with them. It ended up going pretty well. You know, I get along with those guys. I've met those guys a bunch of times from LANs, and you know, I have a lot of you know past history with those guys. So they told me in like almost a verbal agreement, like, yeah, we're probably going to give you a contract. Well, they said we're going to give you a contract. So I'm like, oh my god, okay, this is great. Okay, I'm guaranteed into this contract. But the problem is, it took 2 months for I think that contract to actually come through. Maybe a little bit less, but just because of how everything was moving and how slow everything was going, with the whole Blizzard process and everything, and all these other players need to get signed first and work out all their other contracts. I'm shitting bricks for I'm going to say about 6 weeks, because all it takes is for Dallas to be like, "Hey, sorry, actually, we're not interested. Uh, Good luck." And I would have had no backup plan. So fortunately, actually, I got a message from LA Valiant, which was Older Mortals, being like, Are you interested in trialing for our team?" So I ended up trialing for LA Valiant, and they actually were interested in me as well. And that interest from LA Valiant sparked Dallas to like push the contracts, and so that ended up being really good. Having that second interest from an Overwatch League team, all of a sudden I have this competition, and I ended up joining Dallas Fuel. So I ended up getting that contract. I remember my parents were there, I would say about 2 weeks before I signed my contract. And it had supposed to be come in for the last few weeks. And so they were there just sitting there, and they could tell how stressed I was just waiting for this contract to come through, because this is our livelihood, right? This is everything that I've worked towards to get into the league. So finally putting the name on that contract is like all I wanted. So once that finally happened, I still think that's one of the best days of my life is signing that contract, because it sort of validated everything that I accomplished leading up to that point, right? I I put so much time. I had moved away from everything I had, friends, family, and if I didn't make it to the league, that would have really hurt. It wouldn't have changed much. I would have kept grinding, but being in the forefront and being in the inaugural season was like such a big deal for me. So actually getting that accomplishment was incredible. Um, and I think the people that I need to shout out the most are the BQ family. Uh, I've mentioned them throughout here. It's Beaky, GC, Mike, and their family. At different points throughout this entire story, they've helped me. When things have got the hardest or I have problems, they've had a solution every time. And it's hard to explain how much that really helps. Like, I wouldn't have traveled to North America if I hadn't met GC. I wouldn't have moved to Vancouver if I hadn't met Beaky at that event, and he had been kind enough to be like, "Yeah, man, just crash in my living room. We'll split rent." That takes a lot to someone who you met once. Um, and then I became such good friends with him, and then I met their older brother Mike, and then their parents let me in after I don't think I'd ever met his parents at that point. That Beaky says to his parents, "Hey, like Custa needs a place to stay. Can we house him at least for a little bit?" And they said, "Yeah, for sure." They let me in, and then once I need to leave that house, his brother is like, "Yeah, don't worry, I can give you cheap rent in my basement in a place." Like, I think it would have been really hard to get to where I am, because the amount of peace of mind and the amount of times I've been in a tough spot and they've solved that problem is, it does mean a lot, and I really do consider them my second family. Like, I'm planning on going up there for Christmas and spending it with them. So big shout outs to those guys, because it really does mean a lot. But that's sort of the end of the history, right? Then I joined Dallas, and I think a lot more of what happened since I joined Dallas is public knowledge. I think I'm gonna do another vlog of when I talk about the actual season and how season one went. I'll probably do another vlog and a video on that. Probably not as long as this one, but I'll probably put that together and talk about like all the ups and downs of that. Not too many specifics, but just like talking about my experience throughout the whole thing. So yeah, that's probably going to be the thing. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and sort of help you understand a lot of my path to how do I get to here. And I think the most important thing to take away for people, looking at my story, is if you look at each step of that path, there's no way I could have planned anything of how I went forward. There's no way I could have known that I was going to have a friend that I could split rent with cheaply in Vancouver. There's no way that I knew I was going to have people that I could stay with. There's no way I think I could have planned any of these things, like joining Fnatic, getting recognized. Like, I've been so fortunate in so many different things, but you can't plan for any of those things. So sometimes you just gotta have to go with your gut and push that you know will work out. And anytime you meet a challenge, you find a way to overcome it. Because if you try and plan everything to the T, things aren't going to work out that way, and everything's always going to change. Yeah, I had some dark times before the league. Didn't look like I was going to be a part of it, but through sheer like force of will, the amount of streaming I'm doing, the amount of hard work I was putting into it, it finally paid off. So just always push for what you want to do and your dreams. And from my experience, if you feel like you're stuck and you're not doing what you want to do, sometimes stepping back and looking at what you do want to do and giving it a real honest hard man's chance, you'll find out that anything's possible. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed my story and my rambling. Um, much love, and I'll see you guys in the future.